Hey, welcome to the Strong Roots podcast. My name is Kristin Hill, and we are so excited that you're tuning in today. Our prayer is that you would move one step closer to Jesus through this series. So go ahead and check out this next episode. Welcome to the Strong Roots podcast. We are in our spiritual discipline season, and I'm here with Alyce. And today we are talking about Sabbath and fasting. And so right away, Alyce, those are some pretty big churchy words. How would you define Sabbath, and how would you define fasting?
So I'm going to start with fasting. So fasting is one of those things that I think people have heard of, like even just like, I'm going to fast to work out or lose weight or whatever. But in the church, fasting is an opportunity to give up something that's good. Like food is good. Like for me, social media, it's good. But giving that up so that you can get closer to God in that empty space.
Right.
And so fasting can look like, skipping lunch for a day and devoting that time to prayer. Or for me, I've done fasting from social media for a week or a month or whatever, just so that I can dedicate the time that I would have been grabbing my phone or scrolling or eating a big meal to be able to, give that to God. And for Sabbath, that is actually in the Bible, it's talked about quite a bit, but Sabbath is our one day where we get to rest and we get to spend that day specifically doing things to, honor God. So one day a week is our Sabbath.
Why do you think he asks us to rest one day a week?
I think because God created us, I think he knows how he created us and what we're meant to do. And I think one day a week to really recenter to, give God our mind, our body, our soul, and to be able to, grow closer to him and honor him and worship him in what we're doing in that day. I think it's super important to be able to refocus, reset, and be like, okay, I'm ready, I'm rested, let's go for these next 6 days.
Oh, absolutely. So I'm going to first hit fasting.
Okay.
And then the second part of the podcast, I'm going to hit Sabbath.
Okay.
So my first fasting question is, what role does fasting play in your life, Alyce?
So fasting for me has had an interesting, history. I grew up in church, in the Catholic Church, and during a particular season of the year, you would fast on Fridays. And so that was interesting because I was like, I hate it. Like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to just eat, grilled cheese for dinner or, abstain from whatever it was. But as I've grown in my relationship with God, fasting has played a major role in my prayer life. So I feel like for me, prayer and really focusing in and honing in on Jesus is directly linked to fasting. So.
Absolutely. So how has your life changed now? So I hear like there was no life change when you were younger. How has your life changed now doing the spiritual discipline of fasting?
So I have been, I've had the opportunity to fast in a couple of different ways. I have fasted by doing this Daniel fast, which is a 21-day long, you just eat, like beans and lettuce and like healthy things and really like cut out a lot of those luxurious foods. I have fasted from social media, and I've also on a weekly basis been fasting for our staff and for our church. And so for me, I think it has begun to play like a really important role in the development of my relationship with God, but then also being able to be in his presence and offer him my suffering. I know that sounds so crazy, like, oh, are you really suffering when you don't eat a meal? But I really feel like it is a little tiny, eensy-weensy glimpse of, that hunger pain when you are like, oh, I really want to eat something, and you can offer that up to God. Like, I think that's so special.
How has it affected your relationships with others?
I think it has made me more compassionate, honestly, because in fasting, like specifically for like our staff, praying for them, being intentional about remembering, oh my goodness, like this is the day I am dedicating to pray for these people that I love so much. I think it's grown my love for for one another and for the people that I'm praying for consistently. So.
Absolutely. So how has it changed your relationship with Jesus?
Ooh, I think because fasting is something that is a choice, but it also is very intentional. Like, it has to be intentional. If you just don't eat and you just don't do anything, well, then that was kind of like, oh, what was the point of not eating, lunch today? But I think fasting has made my relationship with God so much deeper. And I think that's the way it is for all of the spiritual disciplines. Like, I'm super excited for this series or this season in the podcast, because I feel like each time you add a spiritual discipline to your life, you are, in effect, deepening your relationship with Jesus. You're making your entire day, your entire life, like fully encompassing, what he has for you. And I think in fasting, it has forced me in those moments, like, to be able to completely be silent, completely devote all of that to God, which has deepened my relationship with him.
And I agree, because anytime you deny something for anyone, like in this podcast, if I were on my phone, scrolling, texting, and not actually engaging you, that wouldn't be beneficial, and that wouldn't be pouring into this relationship. But I feel like anything that I deny for any relationship strengthens the relationship that I'm in with my kids, with my husband. Like, there's always a choice.
Absolutely.
And I feel like you hear the word spiritual discipline and you're like, boring. Is this really whatever?
Yeah.
But I really feel like you hit something on the head, that this is something that when you lean into, it is going to strengthen your relationship with God. Right. And it takes practice, just like denying anything.
Oh, right.
Even being focused in a conversation on Sunday when there's somebody behind the person.
And you're looking away.
And I'm like, don't look at them. Look at the person. Right. But that matters in this relationship, that I'm not constantly. Have you ever been in a conversation with somebody where they're constantly looking at you and you don't feel valued?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm a perpetrator of that.
Oh, me too.
So it's I think it's the same. I think that God knows that these things that he's placed out for us, in the Bible, they're going over time to strengthen our relationship with him.
Yeah.
But it takes that desire, that heart desire, to really connect and to really say, okay, God, I'm going to make this sacrifice for you in these areas of my life.
Absolutely. And I think doing that for him trickulates into being able to do it for others better too.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, we're going to go to Sabbath. So we're switching gears. We're leaving fasting. We're talking about Sabbath. Okay. So Alyce, what role does Sabbath play in your life? Because I know when I moved here, towns used to shut down on Sunday.
Oh, right.
And so everyone, whether you believed or not, everyone took a Sabbath on Sunday in a community. But how now Sundays are not shut down.
Right.
We can do anything we want 7 days a week. How does Sabbath play in your life?
So I feel like it has been said, Sabbath is made for man, not man for the Sabbath, right? And so God knew that we needed this day, and he is saying hey, do this. It's going to be best for you.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to be a legalistic rule, you must not walk around or do these things. That was Old Testament stuff, but Jesus says this is an opportunity for us to rest, but to rest in him. And I think, again, linking back to what we talked about even with fasting, if you are just lounging on at your house watching TV for an entire day, thinking about nothing, totally numbing out, I feel like that's not really doing what God is calling us to do on the Sabbath. I really think the Sabbath is an opportunity for us to reset, recharge with God, asking him to give us rest, asking him to get us ready for the week. So for me, what I like to do is I sit in an office most of the day. I'm here inside church. And so on my Sabbath, which is Saturday, I take Saturday as my Sabbath because we work on Sunday, I like to be outside. I like to take a walk, which is good for my body, which is good for my mind, which is giving me a chance to pray in silence, to be with God during that time of rest. Read a book about him. I do that a lot. But for my husband, it looks a lot different. He's outside every day. He is working his physical body every day. So for him, his Sabbath needs to be more physical rest.
Yeah.
And so I think like it's going to depend on each person. And I think what God is calling you to do and what he knows you need. So for me, I love the verse, and I always forget the actual, little number and chapter, but the one that says like, run the race to win. And I feel like God set this up, and he set humanity up to be able to run this race effectively. But if you don't take that day of rest, I think it would be so easy to burn out, to not have the energy if you're not grabbing onto God and letting him energize you.
Absolutely.
And I think the Sabbath is supposed to be an intentional day to do that.
And I love what you said, that it looks differently for everybody, because how you rest is how different than how I rest. It's different how you rest. And I think even different seasons, different weeks, like some weeks doing laundry is rest to me.
Yeah,
like cleaning my house, doing laundry, like that is resting. And just being able to get my house good for the rest of the week.
Yep.
Sometimes it literally is reading a book, going outside. But I think sometimes we want to push the way we feel rested on other people.
Oh, yeah.
And I love that you made it clear, like, this looks different for everybody. And again, every day of the week, your Sabbath could be completely different. But if you're intentional about, okay, what really would be resting in God's presence today,
Yep.
I think is a huge question to ask. And I feel like even for myself, sometimes I'm like, okay, if I'm not on the couch reading my Bible, like doing nothing,
That's what it has
then
to
it's
be.
not good.
Right.
And that's not the standard God has.
No. Right. And I think that's like, I think because he calls us to live every moment intentionally with him and to be on mission with him, he knows that one day is important to be able to have this recharge. And so if you're taking your Sabbath on a Sunday, I mean, we get to go to church, we get to worship together, we get to, do something intentional with our family that's surrounding around God. Like, I think that those are all important. But do I think that going shopping on your Sabbath is like a bad thing? No, like, I don't think so. I think it's a heart thing. It is a heart thing. And I think that doing something on the outside, if it's not connecting with the heart and with God, then it's meaningless.
Absolutely. So speaking about God, how has taking a Sabbath changed your relationship with him and changed your relationship with other people?
So for me, I am super type A, super go, do things all the time. It would be really easy for me to never take a Sabbath, I feel. Like, maybe not easy, but like easy for me to slip into that.
Yeah.
And I think that being intentional about that day, like spending it with Dakota, my husband, being able to say, okay, I'm committing this morning on Saturday to like really dig down deep in prayer, like really take some time where my mind's not running, it's not racing. I think it has become something habitual where I now have this consistent time with God that I know I'm going to commit to him every week. And it's exciting. Like, it's almost like when you get to hang out with your best friend. Like, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so pumped for this thing we're going to do at the end of the week. And that's kind of how I feel about Sabbath. Like, I'm so excited to be able to spend this time with God, to be able to relax in him in whatever way that looks. Even if I'm adventuring in Valpo or doing some shopping, like, I am still going to commit that day and give that to God.
Absolutely. Have you found, and I'd be curious if you guys have found this too, but the longer I've practiced resting in God, the more I'm able to do it in my everyday life. Like, even right now, like, once you've figured out what that feels like and is, then it almost, I feel like he has us do this as a discipline so that it can become a way of life. Like, every single day we can choose to rest in him. And I think that's for all, like, he wants every single day for us to deny ourselves, pick up our cross, follow him, and fast from whatever is evil, whatever is sinful. Every day he wants us to choose to rest in him. And so I hope we all see the bigger picture. Like, it's not, we could check the box, and we should strive to try to do this, but it's so that every moment this becomes a way of life.
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't agree more. And I would say, like, I'm not totally there yet. I want to be, but I think that honestly, that is where it's moving the needle. I mean, I find my mind less compartmentalized with like, I must do work now, I must pray now. It's more, oh, God is in my work.
Yes.
God is in this moment. You described peace and rest. Like, that is something I haven't felt my whole life. I've been a very anxious person, a very hyper person inside, in my mind. And I think that practicing that one day bleeds over into the others.
Yes, so true. So before we end, practically speaking, someone who's listening and they have never practiced fasting or they have never practiced a Sabbath, what would you want to share with them? How would you want to challenge them to go and try this?
Yes. So, okay, if you have never fasted before, I would say start small.
Yeah.
Start with making a conscious choice to maybe abstain from lunch one day. And maybe even, if it was me, my type 1 self, I would maybe come up with a couple of people or something you want to pray for, like something intentional you're going to do during that time. Because I feel like you might skip lunch and then be like, okay, now what? Is this supposed to work? Like, what's supposed to happen here? I feel like it has been so fruitful for me to know, like, okay, I am intentionally praying for this person during this time.
Do you feel like doing it with somebody else could be a good way to start too?
Yes.
Because then if you screw up, you feel like, oh, darn it.
We can have each other as accountability.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I think maybe picking a prayer partner, a friend, your spouse, like whomever, and saying, okay, let's do this together.
Yeah.
I know Pastor John has called us as a church to do that. And I know many of you guys, I'm sure, have taken that opportunity. But I always like to think it's not going to just be a one-time thing. I think when we read in the Bible, Jesus does this kind of a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, if Jesus did it, I think I kind of want to do that too.
Right.
So for me, I have built up over time the way that I fast and what I'm fasting from, but it doesn't necessarily have to be food either. So if you're someone who's watching and maybe food is maybe not going to be the best for you, I have fasted from social media and have found that to be really, really awesome for my prayer life and just for my mental health and for my spiritual walk with God. So.
And John has even had a friend fast from hot showers.
Goodness!
Yes. So there's lots of different creative things that you can fast from, like she said, social media. Think of luxurious things that we have and maybe go without. So how about Sabbath? What would you say to somebody who wants to take a rest in a Sabbath day?
I would say, again, I think my theme of this has been intentionality and making sure your heart is in the right place. I think that if you have been taking a Sabbath or unintentionally taking a day off work and just doing whatever, lounging around all day, watching movies all day, I don't think there's anything inherently bad about that.
Yeah.
But I think it is a choice to switch your mindset from, I'm just going to think about nothing and numb myself with this, to I'm going to think about God and I'm going to ask him to work in my day, to energize my week. So I would maybe write down a couple of things that maybe a prayer that you want to pray on the day that you're taking for Sabbath, and then make that the thing that you think about, meditate on, that you're praying during that day, so that, man, God, I'm telling you, God is so faithful. He has transformed my weeks and, like we said, bled over into other parts of my life, our lives, because of that. And so I would say start small. Pick one day. Do it just one day this week. You don't have to say every Sabbath from here until forever, I'm going to do this thing. No, just start with one day.
Yeah.
Conquer that with God and then move on to the next one.
Absolutely. Oh, such great advice. Thank you for giving insight into this.
Yeah, of course.
Yes, and thank you guys for tuning in. And we want you to know that this is not meant to overwhelm you. If you just listen to this and you're like, oh my goodness, I didn't even know these things existed.
Right.
We want you to start, like she said, start small. Try to do one thing that was mentioned in this podcast, but we are so excited for this whole season because we really believe that this is going to increase your relationship with Jesus in beautiful ways. So cannot wait to talk to you next week. And until then, we hope that your roots stay strong. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to follow us on our other social media platforms. We don't want you to miss out on any future content. Thank you so much again, guys. I hope you have a great day. And I want you to know I am personally praying that your roots stay strong.